All right, so sitting next to me today is a 2019 Mustang GT with the PP1 performance package on it. It's not PP2, sadly, but this isn't just any Mustang GT. It is my Mustang GT that I traded in my Ecoboost for, which makes no sense because I bought the Ecoboost not that long ago, and that was an Ecoboost performance, but I upgraded to the Mustang GT Premium with the 401A package and the performance package on top of it. The only option it's missing is the performance pack 2, which honestly I like that a lot more, especially with the better rims. But today I'm going to be going over everything, walking you through the car quickly and going over some of the additions that the performance package added on top of the regular Mustang GT. And then I'll be going over 5 things that I love about this Mustang. Anyways, let's hop right into the video. All right, now some of the changes Ford made to the Mustang GT when they added the performance pack. Starting up front, you have a larger front radiator up here. On top of that, you also have stiffened front springs. Now, as for tires, the front tires have a width of 255 millimeters instead of the 235s, and instead of the 235s on the rear, you get 275s, and you stick with these 19-inch rims. These are the performance pack 1 rims. Again, like I said, the Performance Pack 2 rims I like a little more than this, and nowadays for the 2020 and the 2021 model years, you do get these rims on the GT no matter what, because they removed the PP2 option. But moving on to the back, you have a stiffer anti-roll bar back here, a K-brace as well, and then you have this performance rear wing right here. Now this one came equipped with the active exhaust system, which I do like. It's not as loud as I want. I plan on going Corsa Extreme for an exhaust upgrade, which keeps the active exhaust valves, so I'm not giving up the active exhaust entirely. I'm just changing out the system in between the active exhaust and the headers on the car. So this is what that sounds like. Here's what that Coyote is. But yeah, normally I do like the sound of the Mustang GTs. Normally, I just wish it was a little louder than it is. Now on top of that, when you get the Mustang GT Performance, instead of getting the normal 315 axle ratio in the rear, you get an axle ratio of 355 with the automatic, which this one is equipped with the 10R80. And if you get the 6-speed manual, you get a 373 axle ratio. All right, now moving on to the interior of the Mustang GT, right here you have your gauge pack right here, which has your air pressure and then your oil pressure as well. Like I said, this is equipped with the 401A, which gives you the premium leather seats, and then you also get the 12.3-inch digital gauge cluster and some other little goodies. And then I also got this one. When I got it, it was equipped with the Bang & Olufsen sound system, which is a 12-speaker sound system that I really like. It comes nothing close to the Q8's 16-speaker audio system, which was also Bang & Olufsen, but it's still really good. The interior of this car is a much nicer place to be than my Ecoboost was. All right, now moving on to the 5 things I love about this car. And the first one, of course, is going to be the engine. Now, of course, all Mustang GTs come with a 5-liter Coyote V8. This one makes 460 horsepower and 420 pound-feet of torque. Now, the sad thing is if you're going for a 2022, they're going to lower that 460 horsepower to 450 horsepower to meet emissions regulations. But I really like this engine. It has a really, well, not really high revving, but a decently high revving V8. It makes peak power around 7,000 RPMs, and it is so fun to choke the power out of compared to the Ecoboost. The Ecoboost was fun, don't get me wrong. That 4-cylinder, that 2.3 liter, I really liked it. The power came on like instantly when you hit boost. But this is so much more fun, and the sound of it is so much better. I thoroughly enjoy the 5-liter V8. All right, so the next thing I absolutely love about this car that a lot of you manual fans are going to absolutely hate me for is the fact that this has the 10R80 automatic transmission that was co-developed between Ford and GM about a decade ago at this point. But this transmission is super, super quick. It actually, when it shifts, doesn't disconnect the torque converter. In fact, it has 6 clutches on the inside of it that do the work of changing the gears without disconnecting the torque converter from the engine. So under heavy load, this transmission is super lightning quick. And I also didn't get the MT82 because I'm not going to get locked out of third, and I do not want to bang second and break a shift fork in half. And I wanted ease of access because I live in Las Vegas, and it's a lot of city driving. And manual drivers know in a metropolitan area, driving a manual in traffic is super annoying, even with active rev matching. Now the 10R80 is also good because when you go through shifts and shift through your gears, it's only losing about 10% of its revs through each gear versus something like the ZF 8-speed, which loses about 25% of its revs, which adds for quicker and smoother shifting as well. Now that 10% loss from the 10R80 versus something like a 25% loss, the 10% is going to be better because you are going to have quicker and smoother shifts. Now I will admit, at low speeds around town, especially when the car is just getting started and it's cold, it can be a little jerky. But when this thing is under full load, it feels like the transmission doesn't even shift and it just keeps going. Though, when I get into 7th gear, full throttle, wide open, in 7th gear, shifting from 6th, it does feel like it drops a lot of its power out. So the next thing I want to talk about is the 401A equipment level, and particularly the 12.3-inch digital gauge cluster that you get that is color customizable, and you could customize the type of screen that's showing, whether you want the normal, the sport, the track, or the drag strip mode, always showing on the screen. I am okay with the analog gauges on the normal Mustang, but if you get the 201A equipment level on the Ecoboost or the 401A equipment level on the GT, you can get this 12.3-inch digital gauge cluster, and it is so much cleaner looking and it is way cooler looking than the normal analog gauges, and I absolutely love it, especially because, like I said, you can customize what gauges are showing on the screen, what drive mode it's in all the time, and the colors with using the My Color app within the infotainment system. And on top of that, that can be matched up with your other ambient lighting in the car. Right now I have it set to purple of all colors. Now, the final thing I want to talk about is the styling differences in between this and the Ecoboost Performance that I had. Now, the wing stays the same. They were both in shadow black, and the Ecoboost Performance I had actually had some pretty nice looking rims. But for all Ecoboost and all GTs, there's a difference up front that all of them have, and that is going to be the fangs in the grille. And I've always thought the grille in the Ecoboost looks kind of plain compared to the GTs, and it's nice to have these fangs, which adds a little character and an aggressive little touch to the GTs. Now, coming back here, the wheels I'm not going to point out because those are part of the performance package. The wing was the same on the Ecoboost Performance that I had, but I'm talking about the rear valence, which includes the quad exhaust tips and the diffuser back here. You have a more aggressive diffuser, which shows off that differential a little more, and the quad exhaust tips on the GT, no matter if you have active exhaust or the regular exhaust. Now, if you got active exhaust on the Ecoboost, then you would also get the quad tip exhaust. But I like the rear end and the diffuser on the GT a lot more than the Ecoboost, and it solves all those little complaints I had about the Ecoboost not looking aggressive as the GT. All right, so moving on to the next part where, let me restart it. So the next thing I want to discuss with the things I love about this car is going to be how much better it drives than the Ecoboost. Now, power aside, and the fact that this has the automatic transmission aside, because of course those are going to be a given. The transmission's going to shift faster, the engine's going to deliver more power, but the car just feels so much more substantial, and that's probably due to the weight, that you have a little more steering weight up front, especially because there's a lot more weight up in the front end versus the Ecoboost. Felt a little more lighter and a little more playful due to the weight not being as focused up front because the engine was smaller. But the GT, it does have a more substantial feeling, and because it's such a high revving engine compared to the Ecoboost, redline's about 7,500 RPMs versus 6,500 in the Ecoboost. This is just a lot more fun to choke the power out of, especially in the Ecoboost because peak power is at 5,500 RPMs, so there was no point to going all the way up to redline. But in this, I mean, you have a reason to go to redline. And so this is just so much more of a fun car to drive around and really go wide open throttle with, because you can fully rev out the car and still get a benefit from that. Versus the Ecoboost, there was no benefit from you going all the way to 6,500. Neither was there any kind of sound improvement when you're at 6,500 RPMs. It just sounded like you were choking the life out of an inline 4. Versus this, it sounds like you're choking the life out of a V8, which is a lot better. This also has the Magneride damping system, which changes based on your drive modes and changes the suspension characteristics and how soft or stiff the ride is. And I really do like it. I can tell a difference between sport and normal mode. And putting it in sport mode and having the suspension tighten up like that, it is really nice to have, instead of always being stiff or always being too soft and feeling like the ride is just floaty. But having the Magneride system where the suspension can change its characteristics based on what drive mode you're in is really nice, because if you're feeling sporty, then you could put it into sport mode and the suspension will stiffen. And it's lucky that this car came equipped with Magneride. because it's a now almost $1,700 option to slap Magneride on a GT. And I didn't have to foot the bill for that option. But overall, it's definitely a faster car, definitely. Now, it's not going to be as engaging as the Ecoboost was, because the Ecoboost was a manual, versus this with the 10-speed is a automatic. And so this is definitely not as engaging, but in the city, it's definitely a lot nicer to drive around, because I'm not having to downshift and rev match and all that stuff. This just does it. And plus, the shifts in this thing are lightning quick, which is really nice. Open throttle action here. And those 6-piston brakes to slow you down. The brakes are so much better in this. But yeah, having it shift all the way, or having the car go all the way up to 7,000 plus RPMs before shifting is such a nice, it's just cool. Compared to the Ecoboost 5,500, it's just so cool. So definitely love the driving experience more in the GT than I did in the Ecoboost. And so that is my quote-unquote new Mustang GT. It's a 2019, not a 2021. And the one thing I hate about it is going to be this wimpy horn Ford put in it that I just don't get. What was wrong with the normal horn? But other than that, I absolutely love this car. I loved the Ecoboost too. It was fun, it was spry, it was on its feet, and it was the 6-speed manual, which was fun. But I also learned that living in a city, having the automatic is going to be a lot more convenient. And having the GT with the automatic, you're just going to be brutally faster than the manual transmission. So absolutely love this car. Love the price I got for it. And it's going to be a nice addition to the channel. We're going to make plenty of content with it. So yeah, if you guys like this video, leave a like down below. And if you want to see more from us, make sure you subscribe. And I will see you all in the next video.